Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, or whatever time period is in the world wherever you are, and welcome once more to a special episode on the Law by Night podcast, where we are celebrating 2,500 YouTube subscribers, that is, as the kids would say, absolutely mental. I just want to say from the deepest bowels of my cold, decrepit heart, I am eternally grateful for all your wonderful support and gratitude over the last, year and a bit now. This is fantastic. It was only 4 months ago when we were celebrating 1,500. I think that's how many we were celebrating. Yes, 1,500 does sound correct. And it seems I'm a little bit late with this as well, because we're actually closer to 2,700 YouTube subscribers. So, it is either I'm a little bit behind, or you guys and gals, or whatever pronouns you use, are far too eager to enjoy the stuff that I do. But in any case, let us get on with the actual main beef of this special episode. You know how this works by now, but if you don't, I shall inform you anyway. I take to Twitter, Instagram, and the Law by Night Discord server, and I ask the general populace to ask me anything they desire, and then they throw me their weird questions. Most of it's vampire-related, but some of them are a bit more eclectic, shall we say. Some of them are referring to the narrator, Malcolm Ashburn, Orlok, the Nosferatu who runs and hosts the Law by Night podcast, educating the neonate, the nameless neonate, or is he nameless? Some of these questions go to Colin the Gargoyle, who has turned out to be rather popular, but in the case of today's special episode, some of these questions are referring to me, the Law by Night podcast guy. So, without further ado, let us answer these questions, and we shall start with Twitter. The first of these questions comes from an @CWPV_. What is your question, my good sir?
If you don't eat cereals, etc., what's for breakfast?
Now, this answer is referring to a previous answer I gave in a previous Q&A regarding one's breakfast, where I probably said that I don't eat cereal. Now, my breakfast, I'm afraid to report, is both exotic and boring. Now, how is this possible exactly? Well, the boring part of that is it's toast with margarine and honey. The exotic part is that it's gluten-free, not because I'm trying to live a healthy lifestyle. Well, I suppose I am, because dying isn't exactly healthy now. You see, I have a rather serious gluten allergy, and I'd rather not go into the specifics because, it is rather unpleasant. So we'll just leave it at that now. So thank you very much, CWPV_. The next Twitter question comes from Dark Ages Vampire. What is your question, sir or madam?
What is your favourite obfuscate power, including 1 to 10, in V20?
V20, of course, being the abbreviation to Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition, in case you did not know. Obfuscate being my favourite discipline, allowing one to disappear from the mind's eye, which is somewhat different from standard invisibility. And my favourite power from Obfuscate in V20, and I assume we are talking about regular V20, not Dark Ages V20, because there are some minor differences there, is Unseen Passage, followed by Mask of 1,000 Faces at a short second. We are off to some strong starts and some awesome questions. Thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen, or whatever pronoun you wish to use, and I will keep referring to that because that is very important to acknowledge. Now we go on to Celador Mythica. What is your question?
Of the 14 released clans of V5, which are your least to most favourite? Banu Hakim, Bruja, Gangrel, Hakata, La Sombra, Malkavian Ministry, Nosferatu, Ravno, Salubri, Toreador, Tremere, Zamiti, or Ventru?
Now, there are two ways of answering this question, really. I suspect some individuals would want me to answer as the narrator. Now, I can tell you now that Malcolm Ashburn despises all the clans other than the Nosferatu, and even then his attitude towards them is rather flippant, so he would disregard all the clans other than the Nosferatu. But what about myself, yours truly, the Law by Night podcast guy, the creator of this podcast and the creator of this particular Nosferatu? Well, of course, everybody who knows me well will know that the Nosferatu are my favourite clan. It's a question I've answered before in previous Q&As and online on various different media formats, so Nosferatu is going to be at the top of the list. Now, the narrator, as you may know, doesn't like the Toreador. The Toreador are actually one of my favourite clans because, on the surface, yes, they appear to be quite humane and a little bit irritating, but you just dig a little bit deeper beneath the flesh level, or the skin level, into the flesh and into the bones. I don't know where I'm going with this. Basically, beneath the surface of the pleasant, I guess, Toreador, they can be quite a fucked up clan, and I just love them for that, just mwah. And, the thing that the narrator and myself have in common is that we both don't like the Bruja. And for the Brujah, I don't think are very interesting. They're very one note. With the exception of Christoph Romuald, I have yet to find a Brujah that just, I don't know, isn't repetitive in what they do. Now for the others. I am rather unfond of referring to the Hakata as a clan, because they are technically two and a half, 3 clans, the Cappadocians, Harbingers of Skulls, and Giovanni, and then the bloodlines that practice necromancy, so the Lamia, Nakaraja, and Samedi, or Samedi, depending on who you want to ask and what mood you're in. So, I enjoy all of those, so I suspect they're rather near the top. It's rather difficult for me to actually rank them from least favourite to favourite, or the other way around, to be honest. The Venture I find rather boring. They can be a very interesting clan and very frightening. All the clans can be very frightening. The Venture don't move me very much. I am more of a La Sombra person, which says quite a lot about myself. The Gangrel I find rather cool in premise, but again, they're rather one note. The Malkavians, I enjoy the Malkavians in the concept, and I wish people would stop treating them as raving lunatics. It is more the fact that they are granted various different questions, all the questions and all the answers, and how do you process that when you can't? It just, the way it comes out in your mouth, it just sounds, I don't know, gobbledygook to anybody else, so it would seem that you're mad, but really, the Malkavian isn't, as I just said, they are seers, they just have all the answers and have all the questions. Who have we got left? The Ministry, or Clan Setite, the followers of Set, I find them, if you want to go for super manipulative Toreador, they're great for that. The Ravno I have always enjoyed as a clan. Very unpopular opinion. Yes, it is a huge shame that a large portion of the writing has put them into Romani kindred, and I'm saying that because the G word, as I recently found, well, I say recently, the G word, gypsy, is considered a very rude word in some circles, so I try and avoid using that word now. It's Romani kindred. I hope people are noticing that, and I hope it's been acknowledged. Anyway, the Ravno, or the Ravnos, I've always found as an enjoyable concept. The Salubri I've always admired. Who have we got left? Oh yes, and the Zamitsi. Again, the Zamitsi are rather one note, but that is more down to how people portray them. They have a very interesting lore, very regal. I don't like the V5 adaptation, the fact that they're just dragons and they hoard things, and like, ugh, I don't like the Salubri write-up in V5 at all. The Ravno is a bit broken in places as well, but I'm beginning to waffle here. Oh, and the Banu Hakim, again, very interesting clan, very frightening. So I can't really give you an answer from top to bottom, because that list changes all the time, but I hope somewhere in that little rambling you can see what I feel about all the different clans as a whole, or individually, I suppose. The next question on Twitter comes from Mr. Jeremy Miller 1. What is your question?
I enjoyed Rip the Ripper, and I'd like to know what you did to homebrew V5 for the Victorian era.
I was curious how long it was going to take somebody to ask about this. In case you were not aware, I was, well, recent as of this recording, appeared on the World of Darkness Twitch channel doing a Victorian era one-shot for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. Now, Victorian Age Vampire is a revised edition tome, so you might be thinking I did quite a bit to homebrew revised edition material into V5, and much to your disappointment, maybe, perhaps, I don't know, I didn't homebrew anything, because the Victorian Age Vampire is a settings book, for the most part. There's a chapter somewhere roughly in the middle of the book that tells you about how the different clans are portrayed. There's some notes and flaws towards the back, but I didn't include any of those, really. I suppose the only bit of homebrew I really did, if you saw that, you would have been introduced to a gargoyle. And even then, there's not that much homebrew in place, because the disciplines that particular gargoyle had is available in V5, and flight is pretty simple to use, because it doesn't grant any powers, it's just each dot in flight grants the gargoyle the ability to fly further and faster whilst carrying more things. But, is there anything else I could add here to make things a little bit more interesting? Well, I can tell you that one of the players did some home brewing of sorts. Syrinx, I've probably mispronounced her name terribly wrong, who played the Toreador. She had some V20 homebrew for her character, which unfortunately wasn't unveiled during the one-shot, but, you know, these things happen. I kind of underestimated how quickly those 3 hours would fly by. I mean, if anybody else would like to know anything more about the Rip the Ripper stuff that I did, feel free to ask me questions, and perhaps if it comes in huge waves, I might even do a recorded episode on it. But until next time, I hope that will suffice. The next question comes from a femboy female, and I definitely didn't throw up in my mouth a little when I read that. Anyway, what would you like to ask?
Not sure if this has been asked before, since I'm a relatively new subscriber, but what kind of things do you like to do outside of tabletop role-playing games? Any hobbies? Smiley face.
That question has indeed been asked before, but I will happily waffle on about my interests outside of tabletop role-playing games. I like reading. I mentioned in a previous Q&A that I'm a particularly huge fan of Lovecraft and the works of Junji Ito being a manga horror artist. You may be familiar with some of his works. Tomie, Uzumaki, and Gyo, they're the most famous of his three works. I enjoy video games, in particular JRPGs, that's Japanese role-playing games. I enjoy role-playing games in general, to be honest. I enjoy playing and looking after my dogs. I enjoy walking and regular exercise. Well, when I say regular exercise, I mean walking, really, and just going out and about and just having fresh air, things that I have been devoid of this last year and a bit due to fucking imbeciles not adhering to the COVID rules. And that said, in the UK, the once Great Britain, the government have been pissing about and don't have a fucking clue what they're doing. Anyway, my other hobbies, I'm also rather fond of music. Classical music, jazz, funk, soul, R&B, those kind of things. I really like a little bit of everything, to be totally honest. And the most boring of which, and things confuse people the most, I suppose, I enjoy the bit of bird watching. Not terribly into it, in the sense that if I'm sitting down and I see some birds, I will look at them and I know what they are. I just enjoy looking and spending time with animals. So, I'm not the most exciting of individuals. I don't like partying. I don't have a terribly active social life, especially in these trying times. But all of my hobbies are rather self-contained, because that's kind of how I've had to adapt to life, I guess. Anyway, those are my hobbies. And it would seem that Celador Mythica has returned for another question. What would you like to know?
Do you play any other tabletop role-playing games outside of the World of Darkness?
Well, that didn't last very long, did it? Anyway, mostly no. I say mostly, because as of this recording, I am trying to branch out a little bit. Of course, most people know me as an individual associated with Vampire the Masquerade. If you've seen my posts on social media around the Christmas period, I have recently obtained the 20th anniversary editions of Mage and Changeling. I have Demon the Fallen as well, and I have Wraith, but that's World of Darkness. I'm distracting myself. I am trying to get into Cyberpunk, because some of you may know, the wonderful people at Artelsorian Games recently got in touch with me, and they'd shown an interest in the lore stuff that I do, and gave me a huge supply of their catalogue in PDF form to make lore episodes to do with Cyberpunk, because I've been playing Cyberpunk 2077, and I've enjoyed the universe, and been watching some actual plays and things online to get a feel for the game as itself. I've been enjoying that, and I've been wanting to try and get into that. So there's that element of it, so I haven't played that yet. More recently, I have purchased the 5th editions of Dungeons & Dragons, which may surprise some people, because I have historically been rather bitter and unpleasant towards Dungeons & Dragons, but that is all down to one terribly biased experience that I had. Biased isn't the right word. It's one unpleasant experience that I had. Well, I say unpleasant. It was more boring. Boring's the right word. I don't really remember much of what happened other than it was, well, as I said, boring. So I presumed that all games of Dungeons & Dragons were like this, but seeing people in this community talk about it in various actual plays and things, I'm ignoring Critical Role because that's a fucking standard that nobody can reach to. It just seems a bit more engaging than when it was first initially introduced to me, so I'm wanting to try and get into some D&D, some Dungeons & Dragons stuff. So, to answer your question, Celador, in a rather short way, no, not yet. And we move on to the final Twitter question for this Q&A special, and it comes from Ismail VRA. I probably mispronounced that terribly. Anyway, what is your question?
Which is the most obscure and weird bloodline you have ever covered, in a way that it was even hard to find material to describe? Congrats on your success!
Thank you, you're a terribly kind individual. But on to the question. Well, I haven't... This episode isn't live yet, but it is one that I've written about because I've mentioned before on various other places, and possibly in a Q&A, I can't remember now, that I write my episodes in advance, like 3 months in advance. I'm dedicated, And the weirdest bloodline I reckon that I've covered are the Noreads, which is a Scandinavian gangrel offshoot. And when I say that it is rather weird, it's the fact that you can find information on them on a grand total of 2 books, one of which is on a 2-page spread at the back of V20, and the other one is in a panel on a page in Dark Ages Europe. That is it. 2 and a bit pages on an incredibly obscure bloodline. Very interesting bloodline. I think all the bloodlines are interesting. That's part of their charm, but I would say that the Noreads are the most they are interesting. The most obscure that I've covered, because it's a bloodline that definitely is not a playable concept, and I shan't go into lore reasons why that is. I mean, you could argue that the Barley are not a playable concept, and neither the True Brujah, but they're meant as antagonists, but I reckon with some interesting mindset and a certain level of maturity, you could roleplay as either one of those 2 clans sensibly, but as a general rule of thumb, fuck off with those ideas. But the Noread is a concept for a player, didn't know. So anyway, Noread, weird bloodline, great question. And that concludes the Twitter portion of this Q&A section. Thank you very much to the individuals on Twitter who asked me your questions. I really appreciated getting them all. But now we move on to the Instagram section. But before we do, we're going to have a quick break from some famous, infamously witty adverts from Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. And you might be wondering at this point, why am I using a slightly different format? Because previously I have answered all of these in the character of the narrator. Well, after the last Q&A section episode theme, I got a lot of messages from people asking about these adverts, like, who did I get to record these? Oh, these are so funny, your writing's amazing. Well, they're not mine. I just ripped them from the game's files. I thought it was a nice little Easter egg. So this is why I'm using a slightly different format this time, to make it super fucking crystal clear for these people that I am pinching these adverts. Anyway, enough of that. Adverts in 3, 2, 1.
Friggin' Chicken recently challenged several random people to a taste test between Friggin' Chicken and the other leading chicken-flavored products. Let's listen for which one they preferred.
Ma'am, care to participate in a taste test? Here, try this leading brand of chicken.
Oh my gosh! Is that week-old fish?
Now, try this.
Oh, this is some good chicken. What is this?
Sir, take a test for me?
Sure. Seriously, do you have these up your
Here, try this one.
Hey. Motherfucking great chicken right there. What is this?
It's friggin' chicken.
This is cat, right? Are you feeding me cat?
Try this.
Holy fuck. That's good. What the fuck is this 9 out of 10 people preferred Friggin' Chicken over the competition. Why?
'Cause that's some good fucking chicken. I mean, friggin' chicken.
Friggin' Chicken, you'll swear it's the best you've ever had. You love the talking baby movie, and the talking pig, and even the talking car in that show. You know the one I'm talking about. But now prepare for the most hilarious talkingest normally mute object yet. He's Steve Cash, a New York banker and recent whittler down on his luck.
And 10 makes 100. Here's your money, ma'am.
Ma'am, I happen to have a glandular problem. That's it. I'm withdrawing all my millions from this bank.
Cash! She's an ATM machine with the soul of his dead wife.
There's something familiar about this ATM machine.
I love you.
Wow, those marketing guys are geniuses.
Together, they're learning to make the most of their special situation.
So that girl from accounting used me today.
Really?
She wasn't like everybody else. When she pushed my buttons, she was very gentle.
Oh, honey, if you don't stop, I'm gonna have to make a deposit.
Transferring cash. Wednesdays at 8:30 in the BMC. Say goodbye to yellow teeth and spots on your dirty dishes.
It's incredible.
Look at that shine.
Your smile or these dinner plates?
Harnessing the secrets of ancient Egypt, now there's a dishwashing detergent so powerful, it doesn't just leave your dishes spotless, it actually whitens your teeth. Patented time-release spiritoids remove caked-on food and grease and remain on the plate to be absorbed into your food to clean your teeth while you eat. Dazatron, the dishwashing detergent of the future for cleaner plates and whiter teeth. Last year, Democratic candidate Michael Redmond bought a sports utility vehicle. 3 months later, there were 2 separate incidences of hit and runs by an unidentified SUV in his area. Is Democratic candidate Michael Redmond to blame? Can you afford to take that chance? Can your children? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate that has never committed vehicular homicide. Democratic candidate Michael Redmond has never publicly stated his opinion on child pornography. Is it because he's hiding something? Would you want a child pornographer voting on this nation's laws? Could you trust your children's future to someone like that? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, the candidate that is committed to locking up child pornographers. Democratic candidate Michael Rebbins recently sued Senator Robert Thorne for accusing Rebbins of being a murderous child pornographer. But Rebbins had previously said he was against clogging up courts with frivolous lawsuits. Wouldn't this make him a hypocrite? Would you want a hypocrite as your next congressman? Would you want your children to become hypocrites? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate not accused of being a murderous child pornographer.
In a world where people live and die.
Do you think you could just go in there and handle this by yourself?
If that's what it takes. He was about to meet his greatest foe.
Kill them all! All of them!
And a girl.
Hello.
Hi.
And a comic relief sidekick who won't make it to Act 3.
I picked the wrong month to cancel my life insurance.
No, don't say that. You're gonna make it.
With a guy from that other movie that was slightly popular, and what's her name from that show you sometimes watch. In a movie with 2 spectacular CGI battle sequences and an advertising campaign that will leave you no choice but to see this film. See it because it's a movie and all your friends are going. In theaters Friday and on DVD in 3 months.
We have returned to the Law by Night Q&A. And I hope you managed to use that little interval to get yourself some drinks of water, wink wink, and relieve yourselves, wink wink, so we can carry on with the Instagram portion of the Q&A. And historically, I've had fuck all questions from those from Instagram for one reason or another, but it seems that we've had a substantial amount this time, and when I mean substantial, I mean 9. 9 lovely individuals wanted to ask 9 amazing questions. So let's just get on with the first one from, oh Christ, how the fuck are you supposed to pronounce that? Azuraquilla, I believe. That's the name I'm going for. Azuraquilla. What is your question?
What are the narrator's thoughts or opinions on the Sabbat, Camarilla, and Anarch movement?
Deep down, the narrator doesn't really like any of them because they're all just terribly flawed. He would once tell you that the Camarilla was the way forward for kindred society to survive, but given the most reincarnations of V5 lore, he's not too sure about that anymore. He's always despised the modern inception of the Anarchs because it's just unorganized riffraff, and he can respect the Sabbat even though their directions and practices are a bit... how do I put this? Diabolical? That's the short answer. I gave a much larger answer once, I believe, in the first Q&A, so if you want to go and find that out, I suggest you do. It's a real good answer. Apologies, I'm just enjoying myself too much. Okay, question number 2 from Instagram. We have Rubmats123. Rubmats. Is that a little bit naughty? Sounds a little bit naughty. Rubmats123. Okay, ask me your question in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, greetings from the Dominican Republic. What is your favourite signature character, and why?
Hello from the cesspit that is the United Kingdom. I am waving to you. You may not see it, but I am waving to you. Hello. That's my favourite character, other than the blatantly obvious. Wink, wink. My favourite character. Well, part of me wants to say Christoph Romuald, another part of me wants to say Kemenetri of the Setite clan, the Ministry. Another part of me wants to say Helena, and another part of me wants to say Ekaterina the Wise, or Vise, depending on who you ask. I don't really have a favourite, but there's a bunch of favourites to choose from. I hope that's alright nonetheless. The next question comes from a Shuk_Luzev. What would you like to ask?
What VTM clan is most powerful in modern Russia?
When you say modern, there are 2 ways of looking at this. If we're talking about modern revised, I would say it's Clan Zamitsi. If it is modern V20, I would say it's Clan Zamitsi. If it is modern V5, I don't have a fucking clue. I would assume it would be the Ventru, because if my hazy memory serves me correct, I believe the Camarilla have dominated Russia. I'm trying to remember the V5 source book for the Camarilla, and I believe there is a section in that about Moscow. I might have just made that up, though. So it is either the Venture of the Camarilla or Clan Zamitsi. Question number 3 on Instagram comes from Brickbread2009. I wonder when you made your account or when you were born. Anyway, what is your question?
What's your favourite sect to play in games in right now, if you have one?
Well, it has always been the Camarilla. Anyway, thank you very much for your question. Next we have a Thomas... Oh Christ, my screenshot cut out some of your name. Thomas Demetrius, I'm going to assume. You've got the Witcher logo as your profile picture. So, I'm going to just refer to you as Thomas. So, Tom, what is your question?
Which one do you believe to be the best sect, and why is it the Camarilla?
Lemons. Oh, sorry, did you want a serious answer? Well, you should have asked a serious question then, Mr. Timothy. Thank you anyway. Next we move on to our Luke Jen. What is your question, Luke Jen?
What is your best experience with the VTM community since you started the podcast?
That's a very difficult question to answer, so much so I don't even think I'm going to try doing this in character because too much of my brain power is being put into answering that question. And I can't concentrate on doing that and the voice at the moment. There's been so many wonderful experiences with this, to be totally honest. I've made some of the closest and amazing friends I will ever find anywhere. It's just a fucking shame on the other side of the damn world. I've had many people... there's been 3-4 people who've done art of the narrator. I say many because the fact that one person did it is just like, wow, I have fan art. The experience of people saying to me, oh, your podcast has helped me with this, that and the other. There have been so many of those. They've all been wonderful experiences. Being part of the recent family holiday Twitch stream on the World of Darkness channel was a load of fun. It was such a wonderful thing to see how many people enjoyed that, because it was focused around Jack the Ripper, hence the name Rip the Ripper. And I was a bit worried that there were going to be some people who wouldn't like the tone, the topic matter, that we were turning something kind of serious and dark and bleak into something, well, I don't know, fun and enjoyable in a weird, macabre sense. That was amazing, and the fact that... I'm going to toot my hoot for a little bit here. The fact that it's got a good 3,000 views, it scored more views than a lot of the ones that had... the celebrities, you know, the Josephine Madden stuff that she did. She was on 2 of them. Outstar was on 1 of them. You know, it's the fact that just essentially a group of small budding content creators, my friends, gathered together, did something that was unique and special, was that loved. I think it's that, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Just a year and a bit of doing this podcast, and I am deemed worthy enough to appear on the World of Darkness Twitch channel to host a particular segment of a sort. Yeah, I would say that that's been that, just a year of me supporting and the community and doing what I do, that I'm, yeah, that. The next question comes from one of the aforementioned friends I'd mentioned, a Miss Lady Dark Scarlet, who's a lot closer to home, actually. Anywho, what would you like to ask?
When conventions come back, would you run a VTM booth in character or out? Much love.
An interesting question. We've talked about conventions before, you and I in private. Maybe. Maybe I would. Perhaps I would do a one-shot in character regarding the narrator. I've got ideas brewing now that you've asked me that, and I'm not going to tell you, so I'm going to answer your question with a big fat maybe. The next question comes from Emido.94. Ask your question now.
What server do you have, and can people join it?
I am so glad that you asked such a wonderful question, for indeed, the Law by Night Discord server is the place where everybody in the community can come along, if you're willing to obey the rules, that is, of course. Now, there are many different ways people can access it. At the end of each podcast episode, well, most of them at least, I tell people to go to follow the Twitter and Instagram pages if they want to keep up to date with things. Now, if you do that, you will find a handy little link that will take you to all the wonderful places you can listen to the Law by Night podcast, in addition to the Law by Night Discord server. In addition, if you are listening to this on YouTube, you can find that in the description below, along with a bunch of other handy little links and some pleasant verbiage, so go and check out the Law by Night Discord server, folks, for some dank memes. And Law by Night related news, of course. The final Instagram question comes from Jody Han. What? Oh, Geordie Han. Beg your pardon? Geordie Han. I would edit this out, but I am incredibly lazy, and this is going to be an hour long, so fuck that. Geordie Han, what is your question?
What is your opinion about Malkavian's and changelings.
Now, I have already waffled on what I think about the Malkavian clan, but what about the changeling? The fairies of the world of darkness, like actual fairies, that's not me being offensive. I think I answered this in a previous Q&A. Yes, and as a matter of fact, I did. And I did a much better job doing it there than I'm going to regurgitate now, so go and listen to the previous Q&A to find out a more insightful answer about the changeling from my point of view. And as we have reached the end of Instagram questions, I have two things to say. Thank you very much, beautiful people, for beautiful questions. And number two, the second thing I wish to say, it's advert time! Yay!
Phil's here. Gotta run. Great breakfast, honey.
Have a good day, dear. I'm glad you liked the muffins.
Hey, what's that on the counter? That's not my margarine. That's butter.
It's...
Bitch! You know I'm supposed to watch my LDL levels.
I thought it would be a nice change. You couldn't even tell.
You don't want a divorce. You're trying to kill me. I'm glad I slept with your sister.
I thought it was margarine grade B butter. Well, there ants a taste of margarine with all the saturated fat of butter.
You are on fire, Bill! I finally took your advice and you were right. I feel more confident than ever. You the man! Isn't it great? I couldn't even believe it. We went out to dinner and afterwards we started getting busy. I went into the bathroom to take it. I could feel it right away. Hell, you could see the title change in the toilet bowl.
The Visatrek. For an ordinary drug-enhanced erection just isn't enough. Common side effects include fainting, tingling in extremities, temporary blindness, deathly pallor, time perception distortions, aggravated bladder syndrome, emotional incest, pronounced incontinence, delusions of grandeur, and elevated risk of stroke.
Grandpa, will you take me to Spaceburger?
Spaceburger, huh? You know, when I was your age, space was mostly a mystery. We didn't know what was up there. Why, I thought there were little alien kids on Mars that might be watching me. Yeah, I used to make signs for them saying, "Hello, Martians," or "Give me a ride on your rocket craft." Of course, I was young and naive, thinking Martians could read English. Everyone knew Martians communicated telepathically through space operators on their moon base.
Billy, what did I tell you about talking to Grandpa?
But I want to go to Spaceburger.
Spaceburger. This looks like a job for Commander Mom. Report to the space van.
Oh, boy.
We can drop Grandpa off at the home on the way there.
Of course, you don't see Martians on space probes. Everyone knows Martians live in invisible domes.
Spaceburger, food for the space age, not old age. Last year, Democratic candidate Michael Rebbins bought a sports utility vehicle. 3 months later, there were 2 separate incidences of hit and runs by an unidentified SUV in his area. Is Democratic candidate Michael Rebbins to blame? Can you afford to take that chance? Can your children? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate that has never committed vehicular homicide. Democratic candidate Michael Rebbins has never publicly stated his opinion on child pornography. Is it because he's hiding something? Would you want a child pornographer voting on this nation's laws? Would you trust your children's future to someone like that? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, the candidate that is committed to locking up child pornographers. Democratic candidate Michael Rebbins recently sued Senator Robert Thorne for accusing Rebbins of being a murderous child pornographer. But Rebbins had previously said he was against clogging up courts with frivolous lawsuits. Wouldn't this make him a hypocrite? Would you want a hypocrite as your next congressman? Would you want your children to become hypocrites? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate not accused of being a murderous child pornographer. Money troubles, need cash quick, why not try mugging someone? These are exactly the kind of questions the criminals are asking themselves right now. Did you know that the government requires you to wait 10 days for a gun? Why, in that time, a criminal could kill your family 50 times over. So how does a law-abiding citizen like yourself get a theft deterrent system in their hands in the next hour? Come to Loophole Lenny's. We've got antique military weaponry from blunderbusses to World War I grenades. Modern muggers may be stronger and faster than they used to be, but that doesn't mean they can take a slug fired by a Civil War-era pistol any better. And if you're the kind of person that can't sleep at night knowing serial rapists might be in your front yard, we've got German sniper rifles approved by the Kaiser himself that'll make picking them off one by one from the safety of your roof no problem. Buy a weapon this month and we'll throw in an ammo belt with the Constitution printed on it free of charge. Loophole Lenny's, defending your tomorrow with the weapons of yesterday, today.
Ah, would you look at this?
What's that?
Plague of locusts descend on small Indian town.
Jeez, I can't imagine what that must be like.
And look at this. Civil war still raging between ethnic factions in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, heard about that.
And in Zimbabwe, they got to use ox carts for ambulances.
That's terrible. Hey, it's a good thing we live in the U.S.
It sure is, buddy. Hey, bartender, 2 more U.S. ales?
U.S. ale.
Welcome to the United States of Inebriation.
And this is where we enter the main beef of the Q&A section, because it's the Lore by Night Discord server that has historically been the larger section of the Q&A section, so much so that we have to divide up into two sections usually, but it seems considerably smaller this time. Still quite a lot to go for all the same, but let us see what happens. So we go on to question number 1 from Gypsy Tales. Ask away.
For the Lore by Night player character, what is your preferred resonance?
To be completely honest with you, child, it bears no difference to what I drink these nights, especially when you suffer from the thirst of ages. I am sorry to disappoint you, but I really have no preference. Question number 2 comes from Skeleton. Ask away.
One question, and probably be the hardest. If your character of VTMB has finally met their own antediluvian, what would they possibly do to save their own skin?
Meeting the antediluvian pales in comparison to reading that poorly written question. Anywho, I suspect my Tribir would kill himself because he was a cowardly custard. Next we move on to Spaz Wesson. What is your question?
Can you clarify the definition of Elysium? Some say it's a designated place that is neutral at all times, so it's an event that Princess calls where, for a night, a place becomes a party for all and is neutral ground. Is it both? Is the term malleable?
Yes, it is. Because the worrying thing about the various traditions and the Camarilla customs is that they're all very easy to bend and warp to fit the desire of the prince, for better or for worse. So, whereas I could give my own definition of Elysium, it's a very different definition to what you might say, which is a very definition to what Jason Carr might say, or Matthew Dawkins, or your aunt's frog. There is not one definitive answer to what Elysium can mean. That is down to the wielder of Elysium. The next question comes from Lustfulman75. Ask away, you saucy devil.
Congrats for the 2.5k. Does our Nosferatu scholar have knowledge about the different religious cults of kindred society, like the Bahari, the Dark Ages hearsay, or the follower of the Dark Mother and other less common ones?
Indeed he does. I have discussed the Canaanite heresy before, and I am covering those other subjects you mentioned in future podcast episodes. In fact, expect the Bahari and worshippers of the Dark Mother, which are inherently the same thing, in a few weeks' time, so mark that in your diary. The next question comes from everybody's favourite Australian Tremere, Physicist, brackets he/him/they/them, brackets, breathe. Anyway, what would you like to ask, mate?
If one had the power to make or remake a section of the lore in the World of Darkness, what would someone like you want to make or change?
Without going into specifics and greater details, because this is not the place to do it, I would completely rework the Salubri, Ravno and Zemitzi clans for the V5 companion guide. I've kind of covered it a little bit already, but I don't have a fucking clue what the writers were thinking with that one, to be totally honest. Totally missed the mark. That is the first thing that brings to mind. I am sure... the other thing that I'd like to do, I wish that the writers didn't focus so much on the thing I mentioned regarding the Ravno about them being Romani kindred exclusively and trying to shove a square into a circle regarding them and the culture. And I'm also not a huge fan of how they tried to fix the issue rather than trying to focus more on, hey, look at all this lore and history, like the Ravno control India, they helped convicts escape freaking concentration camps. Look at all of this. Nah, what we're going to do, right, we're going to awaken the antediluvian, who's got so much points and fortitude he can walk around in the fucking sun. And then we're going to get Asian vampires that you don't like, the Kuei-Jin, combine efforts with freaking time wizards who are going to pull energy from the fucking sun, turn it into a nuclear bomb, and nuke the fucking cunt to oblivion. That's not even me taking the piss. That is legitimately how they wiped out the Ravno clan. And it's fucking childish. Ironically, it's my favourite bit of lore, but for fuck's sake, I mean... Nunny! Next we have a question from Murray A. Cultist, and I believe this is a question regarding the narrator, so if you like some narrator lore, pin back your ears. Ask away, Murray A.
If it isn't too much or too personal of a question to ask, since you are such an old and knowledgeable kindred, how low is your generation?
It is often seen as impolite to ask one's generation, especially if referring to your elders, but I do not care for such etiquette, for I have no problem sharing with you that I am of Generation 5. My sire of Generation 4 is Yima, and his sire is Absamiliard, making me the grandchild of Absamiliard. And I bet that hasn't made you feel any better now, has it? You probably feel a damn sight worse. Fearful, perhaps. Good. Next, Lars wants to ask me a question. Ask away, Lars.
What would the existence of Cain mean to you? Hypothetically speaking, of course.
An interesting question, that. In many ways, it wouldn't mean much, because we don't know for certain whether Cain was the first vampire, after all. What we know of him comes from the Book of Nod, the vampiric Bible, and let's be frank, how many people, mortal, normal people, believe that the Bible's word is gospel, that it's the truth, that there was a man called Jesus who was resurrected from the dead, a chosen son from God. If anything, I believe the Old Testament to be a more true account of God, but then again, is that even true? Cain's existence means absolutely nothing. The narrator would tell you completely different, but I don't think you were asking him, and if you were, I'm not too sure he would think. Confused, bewildered, kind of the equivalent of seeing Cthulhu, that you know that it exists, but you can't quite comprehend that it's there sort of thing, if that makes sense. Terrible example, but I hope you got my point somewhere in that. Our next question comes from Orkar_Isba with another philosophical question. Ask away.
I'd like to ask, what content would you want to do when you're done with the Bloodlines and video game coverage?
I'm going to assume from that question that you have just started watching or listening to the Law by Night podcast, because the Bloodlines and the video game reviews are roughly in the same space of each other. I've done quite a bit since then, which you will soon discover, but if you haven't, if you have gone beyond those points and you're referring to the more modern stuff like the Liarbomb, what do I intend to do? Well, that would be spoiling now, wouldn't it? And we can't have that now, can we? Next we have our resident Werewolf the Apocalypse expert, Paladin Demo, who I believe your avatar is a white howler that would eventually become the Black Spiral Dancers. Yep, I've been doing my werewolf research. Anyway, what would you like to know?
This is from my favourite Malkavian philosopher. If carrots are good for your eyes, can they dial a phone?
Yes. Next question comes from Ray, but with teeth, who has two questions, and I'm going to ignore the first question, simply because somebody else has asked me that question already and I've already answered it. So don't think I'm ignoring you, I'm acknowledging the question exists, I've already answered it. But your second question goes something like this.
What do you think of the Hecata as a whole? Could the combined force of the various necromancers be a danger rivaling the Sabbat, or is it doomed to fall into infighting and distrust?
Interesting you use the Sabbat as the rival faction here. I presume you mean the Sabbat being a rival to the Camarilla? I mean, in V5, the Anarchs are the main rivals to the Camarilla now. Well, at the time of this recording, no doubt that eventual V5 Sabbat book is going to shit on everything we have done so far. Anyway, do I think they are going to be of as much of a threat as the Sabbat were? No. Do I think that they may just splinter off and do their own thing? Yes. Do I think that the inverse of what I said could be true? Quite possibly. I hope that answers your question. The next question comes from Murta000. What would you like to ask me?
Because I'm interested in the backstory of yours, O Elder One, what is the most memorable encounter that you have had in your unlife?
A question from the narrator, which I'm not going to answer in character, because in a future episode, not that far into the near future, I will answer that question in fantastic detail, so put that in your calendar. The next question comes from another friend of mine, Starweaver. Ask away.
Oh, Laurie. Have you made any enemies in your many years that have actually worried you? If so, have you managed to rid yourself of them, or are they still lurking? Oh, and congrats on the 2.5k subscribers, you Denzian of the night.
Another question from the narrator, not me, you fucking Toreador. Anyway, the narrator's enemies, most of them are dead, some of which by his hand, some of which by outsider hands. The most concerning of his enemies resides in Chicago, associated with a certain club Wink, wink. Boy, oh boy, that is a lot of questions that we've gone through so far. I think it's by time that we have another break, so go on ahead. Go and have something to eat, to drink, to relieve yourselves with. And I'll be here, waiting for you to come back.
Does your penis always seem to be getting in the way?
I got the last of the groceries, honey. I just need to close the trunk.
One more nail and this birdhouse will be as good as new.
Yo!
I'm sorry, sir. This dressing room is for women only.
You don't have to let this happen to you. Hi, I'm Dr. Fred Tuck. Don't let your penis interfere with the quality of your life anymore. I have performed over 300 sex changes in my career, and not one of my patients has ever asked for their tackle box back. Come to Tuck's Sex Exchange in the next month, and I'll give you a free estimate. Don't let your peace interfere with your peace of mind.
Tuck's Sex Exchange, located off Beverly Drive. Look for the sign with Toothy, the surgical saw. Tired of sluggish internet access?
Mom, the internet's all slow again.
I'm not your mom. I'm the creature that evolved out of your mom.
Sick of unwanted spam?
Another email message from my old college roommate, Rod Hughes. Oh my.
Computer problems make it frustrating to log on?
Error 432, network access remote server memory allocation assessment table exceeded. Hard drive reformatting will now commence. What?
Looking for something that requires no logons, no unwanted email, coherent sentences, and no technical problems whatsoever? Read a book. Books, the original internet.
Terrorists are prepared to destroy the largest dam in America. Again.
When she bomb goes off, this Hoover will be caught with his panties down.
And only this renegade cop and his ex-wife's manicurist stand between destruction and unexpected love.
I'll just file you as DOA.
This summer, all bets are off. The heat is on. The fix is in. The dogs are out. The game is up. The chips are down. The stakes are high. The odds are low. The danger is huge. The payoff is slim. Friendships will be made. Rules will be broken. Wrongs will be righted. And no unturned stone will be left. Get ready to be turned inside out and upside down. Hoover 2, Hydroelectric Boogaloo. The best damn movie you'll see this year.
When I'm grinding the reverse Poindexter 540 to Ollie northbound to Contraband, I can't think about being bloated. That's why every morning I down a Pound Ground, the gentle extreme laxing sports drink. Because when you're pulling a wicked Scowcroft 720, you don't want anything to slow you down.
I hope you're feeling better now, because we return to more questions from the Law by Night Discord server, and we have a question from Blair. What's your question, Blair?
Something I hear a lot about is herd and kindred having them, but in your experience, how do you go about obtaining such willing people to feed upon?
There are many different ways to look at this sort of question. It depends from kindred to kindred. Now, let's say that you live with your family. You could form a herd that way. It's rather immoral, but then again, so is the very existence that is being a vampire. You could form a cult. Believe them that you are some sort of god, or a priest for some god who must offer their blood to the deity, which of course you use to feed upon. You could be a celebrity feeding upon your greatest fans. You could also be into something a bit more naughty, wink wink, and feed upon a herd that way. There's no right or wrong answer into doing this, just make sure that you have that sort of masquerade thing in check. Next question comes from a new moderator of the Law by Night Discord server, Chloe the Kearseed Clan. What is your question?
From your resident Cleacid, have you had the chance to try the V-tail cocktails created by my bloodline or others who may be well versed in the art? If so, were you able to taste, admittedly sometimes very subtle differences in flavours the same as us? If not, would you ever consider trying such cocktails?
To my understanding, the cocktails are the alchemy of the Kearseed is the trade secret, but I suppose if such a cocktail wouldn't be the death of me, sure, why not? Next is a question from Boogie Nation, or Boggy Nation. I'm still unsure how to pronounce your name. You probably mentioned it at the time, but I am a bear of very little brain, so Boggy Nation, what would you like to know?
What do you believe is the greatest threat to vampiric society and Canaanites as a whole? On a similar note, do you believe something akin to Zapathasur's awakening and subsequent destruction and clan implosion could occur again?
With regards to the first part of your question, well, the first of your two questions, really, the problem is, of course, the humans. As for the second thing, I think it is highly likely that if one antediluvian could rise from slumber and want to eat everything, I'm sure that other antediluvians would do it as well. But which antediluvian? Well, if there is suddenly a load of people that hate a particular clan, I am sure the writers will just nuke them with the sun like they did before. Next is a question from Theo the Ravno, who has a question for Colin the Gargoyle, which I know plenty of you are looking forward to hearing Colin's voice again. So anyway, Theo, what would you like to ask Colin?
Do you have any memories from before your embrace? How did you and Orlok become friends?
Well, you see, gargoyles they do not remember what they were like when they were human. They were made that way, deliberately. I don't know why you have to ask Orlok that question. He's the smart one. And how did Orlok and I meet? He found me in Tanzania, in Africa, where I was flying around, minding my own business, when I was ambushed by 5 Bonsam, and he came in, ripped off their fucking heads, and I swore my own life to protect him, the most noble of Nosferatu.
And there you have it, some deep, dank Colin lore. And we're going to have another advert here because, a fun fact, doing that voice rips my throat open and I need a drink. Not that that matters because I'm doing this live and I can just pause, but... Advert!
Last year, Democratic candidate Michael Redmond bought a sports utility vehicle. 3 months later, there were 2 separate incidences of hit and runs by an unidentified SUV in his area. Is Democratic candidate Michael Redmond to blame? Can you afford to take that chance? Can your children? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate that has never committed vehicular homicide. Democratic candidate Michael Redmond has never publicly stated his opinion on child pornography. Is it because he's hiding something? Would you want a child pornographer voting on this nation's laws? Would you trust your children's future to someone like that? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, the candidate that is committed to locking up child pornographers. Democratic candidate Michael Redmond recently sued Senator Robert Thorne for accusing Redmond of being a murderous child pornographer. But Redmond had previously said he was against clogging up courts with frivolous lawsuits. Wouldn't this make him a hypocrite? Would you want a hypocrite as your next congressman? Would you want your children to become hypocrites? Vote Republican Senator Robert Thorne, a candidate not accused of being a murderous child pornographer. Preparing for a business sales pitch but don't know how to sell your ideas? Try virtual meeting.
So, if we divert advertising away from expensive television spots and spread it around full-page ads in the leading men's magazines, we can...
That's an idea, but here is what I think we should do.
But I didn't finish.
Yes, that's a good point, but everyone listen to my idea.
But I think...
That's true. However, I don't think that our target market will be willing to accept such a radical approach. Listen to what I have to say on the subject. Are you ready? Good. This is a winner.
And virtual meeting doesn't just help with meetings. It can also prepare you for debating your ideas on the internet.
So, I think if the Democrats are going to have a chance at the office, they are going to have to embrace the more liberal sect of the voter bloc.
Shut up, f***ard.
I majored in political science. I think I know what I'm talking about here.
Laughing out loud. You are so gay.
Virtual meeting. The only meeting preparation device to own.
That was a good idea, which was mine originally. F***ard.
In 1984... a generation of children were introduced to a toy that became an instant classic. 20 years later, that toy is transforming to blend into a whole new environment.
Hey, Bob, right? Mind if I borrow your stapler?
You want staples? Get some of these, Execucon! Nah!
Take control of the noble office bots as they wage slave their secret war against the evil Execucons.
Hey, I'm gonna be here pretty late. Do you mind if I get a cup of that coffee?
Graphitron transform! Coffee is for closers, office bot!
Collect 30 different corporate robots as they battle for workplace supremacy.
Look out, Optical Mouse Prime, it's Cell Phoner! I've got your number, employees, and you're all getting called in this weekend!
Office bots! Transform and clock in.
Deformers!
You live. You die. And sometimes you get brought back to life. This fall.
I'm afraid I can't see too well these days. Do you think you could go to the nearest village and pick me up a loaf of bread?
Bread! Good!
The new horror RPG from Troika Games.
Bread!
Oh, I can tell you where the bakery is, stranger, but before I do, would you mind picking up my little girl from the lake?
You are the monster. Or are you?
If you want to enter this bakery, you'll have to defeat me.
And this torch!
Frankenstein, Breadlust, coming soon to a PC near you.
Game! Good.
And we are on the final stretch of questions, ladies and jelly spoons, and whatever pronouns you wish to use. And we have a question now from Velvet the Magic Kitehiv. What would you like to ask?
I have a question for Orlok. It took me way too damn long to realise Count Orlok was named after you. Or is it the other way round?
What do you think? Next we have a question from F_Silver. Ask away.
Good evening, sir. I was wondering if there would be more episodes about specific kindred like the Vorman twins. I really enjoyed learning about their secrets and gossip. Are you planning on telling us more juicy information about other kindred that you may know? And would you like to explain the neonate about the other world of darkness, law, and death, like the werewolf, changing, or mage universes?
Well, I'm very glad that you enjoyed the Vorman Twins episode. That was a very fun one to record, actually, and an interesting one to research. Now, to the answer to all of your questions, yes, 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 and yes. There will be more of all of those things, but with regards to characters, remember that question when Murta asked me about memorable encounters? Well, there is a character coming up that's, I think people are going to enjoy listening to. It's, I won't say who it is, but he's a rather important character regarding the establishment of vampires in England. There you go, there are your clues. The next question comes from Touch of Oblivion. I wonder what their favourite discipline is. Anyway, question, ask, now, go.
Congratulations on another milestone. It's well earned. I have two questions, one being rather brief. The first is what your favourite live casts of VTM are. I've been watching LA by Night for the first time and have been enjoying it immensely and would love your recommendations. My second question, how do you stop those of us of the shadows from being there with you, right now, in this lovely dark corner, watching, always watching?
Okay, favourite live cast or actual plays, you've got literally everything that Twin Cities by Night have done. A bit controversial, but there you go. You've got The Family from Red Moon Roleplay, and you have Chicago by Night by Near Dark Studios. You have... oh, fuck, what's it called? There is a V5 Chronicle, it's 3 episodes long. A Touch of Blood, I want to say it's called. It's got Jacob Burgress as the storyteller. I've probably got your surname wrong. I'm so sorry. That's really awesome. You have Atlantic by Night, ATL by Night, whatever it's fucking called. Ellie's always beating me up because I'm saying it wrong. Yeah, Ellie Collins is the storyteller for that. You have BG by Night, who you've got Faye the Pagan's the storyteller for that. That's also awesome. Gehenna Gaming, they do quite a few awesome things as well. Let me think, I'm running out of ideas. You have every V20 Chronicle that Caffeinated Conquest have done if you want something a bit more lighthearted and silly. You've got The Ruins of Warshaw by my friend Cassandra. Hi. That's a V20 Chronicle set in post-World War II Poland. That's awesome. Go and check that out. Oh shit, there's so many of them. So many. Yeah, you've got quite a few to work through there, actually, so make a start with those. And with regards to how to stop you La Sombras from watching us sleep at night, I sleep with a light on, so go fuck yourself. The next question comes from Bambi, who wasn't able to access the Ask Me Anything channel in the Discord server for technical reasons, so they messaged me privately with the question whilst this was going on, so I'm going to include it anyway. Anyway, Bambi, what would you like to know?
What is your favourite piece of VTM art?
That is a very, very difficult question to ask, because Vampire the Masquerade has been going for a good 30 years, and there's been so many fantastic pieces of art to admire and to drool all over. And being the basic bitch that I am, I'm very much inclined to go and say, well, here's this piece that Tim Bradstreet did, or here are these photos that Mark Kelly did, all of which are awesome in one way or another, but I'm not actually going to say any of those things because I actually am far more moved by the more recent works of Amy Wilkins, who's done art for the Chicago by Night book, the Chicago Folies. I believe she did Let the Streets Run Red. I might have just made that up. And most recently, Cult of the Blood Gods. There is something really special about her artwork, and I'm trying not to fangirl too much, especially when I know that she is somebody who listens to the podcast occasionally. Hello. But Tim Bradstreet did a fantastic job in the beginning with Vampire, like that late gothic punk style, whereas Amy Wilkins' style has really brought it into the 21st century and modernized a lot of these signature characters from Chicago by Night. And I don't know, I kind of lack the vocabulary to say what's special about it, especially after a good 3 hours of solid recording. But yeah, if I would have to choose one of her pieces, now unfortunately I don't know all the characters in the Chicago by Night book, but there's a woman, long black hair, she's sort of looking downwards, she's got like a black jacket sort of thing, and I think it's a reddish top. If you know the piece I'm talking about, do let me know. But for a character I do know, her interpretation of Helena is just the bestest of chef kisses. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. A very tired and exhausted Law by Night podcast guy, as you can probably hear. Doing that Colin voice has knocked me sideways. But we are at the final question. And it is a rather long one, and it requires a long answer. And it has a lot of lore in it, a lot of meaning, and it's something that has been requested quite a bit with my fans, with a piece of lore regarding the narrator, something I've hinted at in episodes before, and I want to spend this final segment answering this question properly. So I'm going to sign off here now. Thank you ever so much for listening to all of my podcast episodes. Thank you very much for the YouTube subscribers. Thank you very much for joining me on the occasional Twitch streams that I do. Thank you very much for supporting me on Twitter and Instagram, and the lovely people on the Law by Night Discord server. And just everything that you do, and all the support and criticisms and comments and compliments you get. Yes, I do accept criticisms because I want to improve and get better. But you're all just truly amazing, and I can't wait to do this all over again at 3,500 subscribers. And I have to come up with something special to celebrate 3,000 subscribers, because I was supposed to do something for 2,000, but I'm still waiting to do something for the 1,000. Anyway, the final question that I'm going to answer in great detail comes from Peach, who's been there pretty much since the beginning. There, as in the Law by Night Discord server. One of the first members, anyway. One of the founding 100. Anyway, Peach, the question of questions.
Do you still think of her? Are the nights still cold at her loss of love and body? To many of us, the barley are all but faded into myth and legend now, yet still your mind is plagued by her final thoughts. Those empty memories of rapturous nights spent in her arms have passed quietly from thoughts, yet still here you are. What happened, Orlok? Was it truly so terrible that you dare not speak it into existence again?
No, I do not.